All worlds begin with Demon Slayer. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 926, The Prelude to Revenge. Mado, wait. This is the intelligence gathering team. We have received an eyewitness report about a man named Fukushima Sato Gao. The other party's tone is too exaggerated. We think it is very likely a prank call. However, in order to ensure that no information is missed, it is necessary to inform you of this information. Mado, who was in the temporary branch of the 20th district, soon received a call from the headquarters intelligence department, and then obtained the information of Hirami's father from the intelligence department. On the sticky note on the table, Mado wrote the words, Shigeharu Elementary School, and sewer. When receiving this information, Mado also felt that this information was very likely a prank. After all, the fox and the rabbit had just assassinated him the day before yesterday, and the rabbit was shot with a bullet containing RC inhibitors, and it was obvious that it would not recover so quickly. Have you eaten? However, Mado soon thought of another point. If the rabbit eats a lot after being injured, it can indeed quickly eliminate the effects of the RC inhibitor and recover quickly. However, there have been no cases of missing persons or being hunted in District 20 recently, so this made Mado feel that it was a bit abnormal. And according to normal logic, after the assassination failed, Mado thought that the fox and the white rabbit should hide for a while and would not take action so quickly. Of course, Mado did not rule out that this was a trap to lure him in. Mado looked at the time and found that it was almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In a few hours, it would be dark. What a perfect time, Mado said with emotion. However, Mado still did not feel like leaving immediately, but immediately retrieved the construction engineering drawings of the sewer of Shigeharu Elementary School and the map near Shigeharu Elementary School, and began to analyze and study them. After this round of analysis, Mado felt more and more that this was a trap, and the design was very perfect. The sewer was very long, with a length of nearly 3 kilometers. The drainage system of Shigeharu Elementary School was all maintained by the sewer. In other words, if we don't block both ends, one end will become an escape exit. If we search from both ends at the same time, we must split up into 2 groups. In this case, if we encounter them ambushing at one end, it will be a very dangerous situation. What a cunning plan. As expected of a fox. Mado sighed again. After considering it, Mado finally chose to go and check it out. After all, this is his job. If he didn't dare to go because he was afraid of death, then Mado would not be a Gao investigator in CCG. There is actually a reason why Mado chose to take the initiative to fall into the trap. First, Mado's intuition believes that the rabbit has definitely not recovered, and choosing such a powerful location for him, Mado believes that the number of the other party must not be large. The most important point is that Sato Feng was transferred to the 20th area, and Sato Feng's strength is also good. For Mado, it is indeed a great help. If there is no Sato Feng, Mado probably won't take this risk. Then, Mado called Damon Katero and Satoki over and told them about the operation. Satoki quickly realized from Mado's narration that this was a trap, but in this case, they didn't need to play the cat and mouse game. Chapter 927 Hirami's Plan. Amon Katero noticed that in addition to the cook-in box, Mado also brought a handbag. The bag was bulging, and it was obvious that there was something inside. Amon Katero couldn't help but ask curiously, Mado senpai, what's in the bag in your hand? Amon, you'd better not know this. Mado didn't tell Amon Katero what was in the bag. Hearing this, Amon Katero didn't ask much, and then went to Tangyuan Primary School with Mado. According to Mado's arrangement, Mado went alone, and Amon Katero went with Satoki, because Mado was worried about Amon Katero being alone, and with Satoki's care, he believed that he would be much safer. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the antique coffee shop was off work, and Iramizuan and Furumaran had already left Antique. After get off work, Nishio Nishiki didn't come to work today because of his studies. College is different from high school, so Nishio Nishiki and Kaneki can work more hours than Kirishima Taoka. Basically, when they don't have classes, they come to work at the antique shop. Kirishima Talca is in high school, so she has to go to school from Monday to Friday except for the weekend. So Kirishima Talca works at the antique shop on weekends and goes to school on Monday and Friday. Kaneki Ken works in the store today because he doesn't have classes. At this time, Bai Yu and Yoshimura Kozan are cleaning the bar, and Kaneki Ken is responsible for the hygiene of each table. At this time, Fugashima Sato rushed down from the second floor anxiously and then came to Yoshimura Kozan and said anxiously, "Yoshimura Sr." Hinami went to find Hakachiro alone. After that, Fugashima Sato handed a piece of drawing paper to Yoshimura Kozan, who stopped what he was doing and then took the drawing paper and looked at it. Fugashima Sato's words also attracted Bai Yu and Kaneki Ken. Because Bai Yu was standing at the bar, he could clearly see the content written on the drawing paper. After he got close to Yoshimura Kozan, the content on the drawing paper was indeed written by Hinami, and the handwriting was very awkward and very brief. "Dad, I'm going to heaven to find my mother. I will die where I went to school before." The content was very brief, but it told the destination. Soon Yoshimura Kozan saw that this was a plan for Hinami to force Gugu to intervene, and he was using his own life as the price. It can be said that, if they don't take action on this, then Hinami's ending will be death. From the content of this drawing paper, Yoshimura Kozan could feel the despair of Hinami losing her mother, and he couldn't help but feel distressed. Where is the elementary school that Hinami is talking about? Yoshimura Kozan didn't waste any words and asked directly. Tangian Elementary School. Fugashima Sato answered immediately. "Fossen Sr., you must save Hinami. I already lost Ryoko, and I can't be without Hinami anymore." Fugashima Sato then begged Yoshimura Kozan again. "Bai Yu, please go to Shigetara Elementary School as quickly as possible. The four parties will support you as soon as possible." This time, Yoshimura Kozan did not intend to go in person, but appointed Bai Yu to rescue Hinami, which was also an absolute trust in Bai Yu. "I will go too. I'm very familiar with Tangian Elementary School." Kaneki Ken took the initiative to ask. Chapter 928, Hinami's birthplace. The reason why Yoshimura Kozan didn't go in person this time was because Shihorenshi would also intervene, and Shihorenshi lived near Shigetara Elementary School. With Shihorenshi, Yoshimura Kozan felt that there was no need for him to take action. "Kaneki, this operation is very dangerous. There is a high possibility of a battle with Bai. If you don't have the awareness of fighting, I think you should not go." At this time, Yoshimura Kozan simply and clearly reminded Kaneki Ken. In fact, Yoshimura Kozan was not very confident that Kaneki Ken would do such a dangerous thing. It was not that he disliked Kaneki Ken's lack of ability, but that he felt that Kaneki Ken did not have such an awareness, the awareness of fighting. "Manager, I will go this time, no matter what you say," Kaneki Ken said very firmly. Kaneki Ken's heart has been under great pressure from Mrs. Ryoko's death. If Hinami gets into trouble again, Kaneki Ken's heart will really collapse. Because Kaneki Ken felt that Hinami must be blaming herself in her heart, although she did not say anything to herself. Therefore, Kaneki Ken felt that Hinami would become like this and make such a choice, which had a lot to do with himself. If Kaneki Ken could have protected Mrs. Ryoko that time, Hinami would not have lost her mother. If Hinami had not lost her mother, things like today would not have happened. "I'll go too." Fugashima Sato also intended to go there himself. This time, Yoshimura Kozan did not stop Fugashima Sato. Then Bai Yu, Kaneki Ken and Fugashima Sato changed their clothes, put on masks, and went out to find antiques. The three of them quickly arrived at Shigetara Elementary School. At this time, there were no students in Shigetara Elementary School. The school gate was closed, and only the school guard was guarding there. Will Hinami really be in the school? Bai Yu couldn't help but ask himself. It would be troublesome to go in through the main gate. "Let's sneak over the wall," Bai Yu suggested. Kaneki Ken and Fugashima Sato had no objections. The three of them quickly sneaked into the school and then searched separately. The school was very quiet. After searching for a while, the three of them did not find Hinami, nor did they run into Bai. Soon, Bai Yu, Kaneki Ken and Fugashima Sato gathered together again. At this time, Bai Yu said, "There is no sign of fighting in the school. Hinami is either not in school or has been captured alive by CCG. At this time, Bai Yu was already secretly anxious because it was already 6:30. The longer the time dragged, the more dangerous Hinami would be. Hearing this, Kaneki Ken was also in a very heavy mood. Fugashima Sato also became anxious. His daughter's message clearly said this place. But now the school has not found anything. Then, the drawing paper, where his daughter wrote the message, appeared in Fugashima Sato's mind. After thinking about it repeatedly, Fugashima Sato suddenly had a flash of inspiration and said, "Sewer? Sewer?" Bai Yu asked puzzledly, and then his eyes turned to Fugashima Sato. "There is a sewer near Shigetara Elementary School. Hinami's mother gave birth to Hinami in the sewer. At that time, I had just left the original organization and came to District 20. I was penniless, so I lived in the sewer with Hinami's mother for a while." Chapter 929 Gift. So when Hinami said she would die at school, it should not be the school, but the place where her mother gave birth to her. Fugashima Sato explained. After listening to Fugashima Sato's story, Bai Yu did not expect that Fugashima Sato and Mrs. Ryoko actually had such a tragic life experience. Perhaps this is what is called love. Kaneki Ken listened to Fugashima Sato's words and couldn't help but feel very touched. At this time, the superdimensional crossing system suddenly broadcast. New mission activated. Mission: rescue Fugachi Hinami. Mission completion reward: dimension wall power increased by 1%. Mission time limit: 7 minutes. With the end of the broadcast, the 7-minute countdown has begun to run out, which means that after 7 minutes, Hinami will be killed. The release of the mission also means that Hinami is likely to have met Bai. Let's go. Bai Yu did not delay any longer, but planned to go to the sewer mentioned by Fugashima Sato. With Bai Yu's order, the three of them set off again to the sewer near Shigetara Elementary School. After getting the accurate information, Mado arrived at the sewer earlier than Bai Yu. Mado put on the night vision goggles and walked into the sewer carefully. Because it was night and there was no lighting in the sewer, it was very dark. If there was no night vision goggles, walking into the sewer would be like being blind. The eyes of the Gao have a built-in night vision function, so they will not be affected by the darkness. This is why Mado thinks that the planner is cunning. However, despite the help of the night vision goggles, Mado did not take it lightly. After all, what kind of situation would greet him later? Mado was not sure in his heart. Even if he was facing only the fox, Mado knew that the fox was a difficult guy. Mado regarded the fox as the planner who planned all this, but this time Mado's judgment was wrong. Bai Yu did not plan all this, but Fugachi Hinami planned all this. If Mado knew that it was a little girl who planned all this in order to avenge her mother, I wonder how he would feel in his heart. Not long after walking into the sewer, Mado saw a little girl appear in his sight. Mado stopped and did not move forward. The little girl standing there was Hinami, who was waiting for Mado and the others to come. "You are Fugachi's daughter, right? I brought you a gift. I think you will like it." After saying that, Mado immediately threw the bulging handbag over. Hinami still stood there motionless, like a piece of wood. Mado saw that Hinami was motionless, so he said again, "Don't you want to open it and take a look? You are so unfilial. You don't even want your own mother. Your mother shouldn't have saved you in the first place." Mado's verbal stimulation finally made Hinami react. In fact, Hinami could guess what was in the bag, but Hinami just didn't have the courage to pick up the bag. Hinami picked up the bag, then opened it, and took a look. The things in the bag were the same as Hinami's guess. Suddenly, Hinami's tears flowed out, and anger filled her whole body. "You bad guy. I'm going to kill you, and then chop off your head the same way." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 930, Runaway Hinami. Sodane. You are really a little pervert. Mado used harsh words to stimulate Hinami, but because of her anger, Hinami released her own Kagoon. Hinami's Kagoon inherited both her father's and mother's Kagoon, and she was born with two kinds of Kagoon. If this is a world where people become stronger through practice, then Hinami is definitely a genius who is born with advantages. The most important thing is that Hinami not only inherited his tail Kagun from his father, but also has one more tail Kagun than his father. It may be because she inherited her father's tail Kagun at the same time, which caused the armor Kagun inherited from Hinami's mother to be weakened a lot. There are only 2 blade-like armor Kagun growing near the shoulder blade, while Mrs. Ryoko has 4, and the size of Hinami's armor Kagun is also smaller than Mrs. Ryoko's. Of course, this may be because Hinami's Kagun has not grown yet. Hahaha. It's really a little pervert. This kind of high quality Kagun is really exciting. Mado was excited after seeing Hinami's Kagun. However, Mado soon discovered that Hinami's tail Kagun was exactly the same as the tail Kagun released by Shiraha at that time. Combined with the fox's action of rescuing Fugashima Sato in the slums of District 20 last time, and the action of assassinating himself with Rabbit the day before yesterday, Mado came to a conclusion that the fox and Hinami were related by blood. Little pervert, I asked your brother if he has a fox mask. Mado asked Hinami again. Now Hinami was no longer in the mood to chat with Mado, and the 2 tail Kaguns were like long whips, whipping Mado. Seeing Hinami attack, Mado immediately used the kakin made from Mrs. Ryoko's Kagun bag. As soon as this kakin was released from the box, it immediately opened like a bunch of petals, almost occupying half of the space of the sewer, and completely protected Mado behind him. With the protection of this kakin, Hinami's attack could not touch Mado at all, and Hinami's Kagun was still in the development stage, so she could not break her mother's Kagun at all. Awesome. 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 It's really awesome. I really want to get a Kagun bag like this. Mado hid behind the Kukin, watching Hinami's 2 tail Kaguns attacking crazily, and his heart became more and more crazy. Then, he saw Mado untied another Kukin box again. This Kukin box was a relatively low level tail Kagun longsword, or spear. Then Mado suddenly controlled the Kukin made by Mrs. Ryoko's Kagun bag, and tightly wrapped the 2 tail Kaguns that Hinami whipped over. How does it feel to be hugged by your mother? Mado then teased Hinami again. Because Hinami's Kagun was tightly wrapped, Hinami, who did not have much combat experience, was stunned. She wanted to forcibly pull back the Kagun, but found that the Kagun had been sucked in tightly, and could not be pulled back at all. After Hinami took the initiative to attack, Mado found that the fox did not show up, and he could not help but make a bold guess, which was based on the premise that the fox and Hinami were related by blood. That is, the failure of the assassination attempt by the fox the day before yesterday caused Hinami to have disagreements with the fox and other family members, and then this plan was set up. As expected of the fox's sister, she is just as cunning, Mado murmured. Then, Mado took advantage of the opportunity when Hinami could not control Okaku, and rushed towards Hinami quickly, intending to take the opportunity to get rid of Hinami. Chapter 931 Ran away. Shiraha, Kaneki-ken and Fugashima Sato, who were rushing towards the sewer, soon arrived at the entrance on one side of the sewer, and ran into Amon Kotaro and Satoki who stayed near the entrance. The 2 sides confronted each other immediately, and then it started to rain heavily. Amon Kotaro had contact with Shiraha wearing a fox mask, but he had no impression of Kaneki-ken and Fugashima Sato wearing masks. Kaneki-ken's mask was not a full face mask, but a half-face black mask with a single eye patch on the right eye. The left eye, which had turned brown, was exposed. It can be said that the mask tailored by Mr. Bai for Kaneki-ken was very suitable for Kaneki-ken. Mr. Bai also imitated the mouth of the half-face mask into a mouth without lips, so it looked like it was gritting its teeth. The 2 rows of plastic dentures were connected by a zipper, which was probably designed so that Kaneki-ken could eat without taking off the mask when fighting. This mask on Kaneki-ken's face seemed to completely highlight Kaneki-ken's opposite side, and also made Kaneki-ken look even more bluffing. Facing Bai Yu, Kaneki-ken and Fugashima Sato, Amon Kotaro and Satoki had already unlocked the Kukin box in their own books. Don't hold back, Kotaro. Satoki reminded Amon Kotaro. You too. Amon Kotaro also replied. As for Bai Yu, Amon Kotaro felt a little tricky. Now in addition to Bai Yu, there are 2 more gals that he has never seen. Without knowing the strength of Kaneki-ken and Fugashima Sato, Amon Kotaro felt a little insecure. Hina is in danger now. You hold these two people back, and I will go into the sewer to find Hinami. Is it okay? Bai Yu asked Kaneki Ken and Fugashima Sato at this time. No problem, but please make sure to bring Hinami back safely. Fugashima Sato had no objection to this. Because Fugashima Sato also knew that, since there was a gal investigator staying here, it meant that Hinami was very likely in the sewer. Kaneki Ken did not speak and acquiesced to Bai Yu's decision, because Kaneki Ken knew that among the three people, Bai Yu was undoubtedly the most capable. If Fugashima Sato was also a tough guy, he would not live like this, hiding in an antique coffee shop, so Kaneki Ken thought that Fugashima Sato's strength should not be strong. In addition, Fugashima Sato himself agreed with Bai Yu's decision, which further proved that Fugashima Sato was not as good as Bai Yu. Otherwise, if Fugashima Sato was confident in himself as a father, he would definitely do it himself. Well, be careful. Bai Yu nodded, and then he didn't hesitate too much, and rushed directly into the darkness of the sewer. Seeing Bai Yu rushing over, Amon Kotaro and Sato Feng thought that Bai Yu was going to take the lead in attacking, and they couldn't help but meet him. Bai Yu used the Liu body movement to bypass Amon Kotaro and Sato Kid in a way that neither Amon Kotaro nor Sato Kid could react or detect. Amon Kotaro and Sato Kid turned around immediately and saw Bai Yu disappear into the darkness of the sewer at a very fast speed. Run away. Amon Kotaro didn't understand Bai Yu's actions, but he didn't dare to chase him because he and Sato Kid didn't have night vision goggles, and entering the sewer would be a very dangerous behavior. Chapter 932. Kaneki Ken has no intentions of fighting. If this was the Fox's plan, and he and Sato Feng rushed in like this, they would really fall into the trap. However, Kotaro Amon began to worry about Mado, because Bai Yu might also be heading for Mado at the other end of the sewer. But no matter what the real situation was, Kotaro Amon always felt that they were being led by the nose by the other party. Sato Feng had already taken out the pistol with special bullets, aiming at the darkness of the sewer, and seemed to be hesitating whether to shoot. In the end, Sato Feng still fired a few shots at the approximate location where Bai Yu disappeared, and then heard the sound of bullets bursting out of the barrel and the sound of bullets hitting hard objects. Sato Feng didn't know where the bullets hit, but he was sure that they didn't hit Bai Yu. After all, Fugashima Sato had been with the gecko before. So when Sato Feng fired, he had already released his tail, and then the tail whipped towards Sato Feng. Amon Kotaro immediately swung the stick hammer Kyuken in his hand, and knocked it towards the Kagoon that Fugashima Sato attacked, and then helped Sato Kid to resist Fugashima Sato's sneak attack. Kaneki Ken stood there indifferently. Kaneki Ken was actually not prepared for the battle. He originally wanted to talk back for a while, and try not to fight if he could. As a result, before Kaneki Ken could think of how to talk back, Fugashima Sato had already released his Kagoon and took the lead. Sato, let's deal with the two in front of us first. Amon Kotaro said to Sato Kid after knocking Fugashima Sato's tail Kagoon open. Hearing this, Sato Kid put away his pistol and rushed towards Fugashima Sato, who took the initiative to attack him. Kotaro, leave this to me. You go deal with the other one. Sato Kid said this to Amon Kotaro when he rushed towards Fugashima Sato. Amon Kotaro did not hesitate at all and directly picked up the stick hammer in his hand and rushed towards Kaneki Ken. Amon Kotaro rushed in front of him, and Kaneki Ken finally reacted. However, it was too late for Kaneki Ken to dodge. After all, Amon Kotaro was also an experienced Gal investigator, so Amon Kotaro's attack was directly aimed at Kaneki Ken's head. Kaneki Ken, who could no longer dodge, could only cross his hands in front of his head to welcome the arrival of Amon Kotaro's hammer. In an instant, Kaneki Ken was knocked out. Amon Kotaro also stood still, because Amon Kotaro had noticed Kaneki Ken's abnormality from Kaneki Ken's reaction just now. He had never encountered a gal who would be distracted when facing a gal investigator. What was wrong with this guy? On the other side, Fugashima Sato's battle with Sato Kid was much more intense. Fugashima Sato's bloodiness was completely awakened at this time. Amon Kotaro looked at the stalemate in the fight with Sato Kid, and then looked at Kaneki Ken, who was knocked away by his attack, and couldn't help but think that Kaneki Ken was here to make fun of him. What the hell is this guy doing? Aman-Kotaro was a little confused about what Kaneki-ken was doing. Seeing that Kaneki-ken was slow to get up, Aman-Kotaro was too lazy to pay attention to Kaneki-ken and turned around to help Satoki deal with Fugashima Sato. Chapter 933, Gun pointed at Kaneki-ken. Compared to Kaneki-ken, who is not too aggressive, Aman-Kotaro thinks that Fugashima Sato, who is very aggressive, is the target to be solved first. Aman-Kotaro's intervention made Fugashima Sato, who was concentrating on dealing with Satoki, unable to react in time, and then he was knocked out by Aman-Kotaro's hammer. Fugashima Sato immediately got up, and then glanced around, and found that Kaneki-ken had been knocked to the ground, and immediately asked loudly, "Are you okay?" Eye-patch. Eye-patch is the code name that Bai Yu and Fugashima Sato arranged for Kaneki-ken. This is also to prevent Kaneki-ken's real name from being exposed and affecting Kaneki-ken's future life. Lying on the rain-soaked ground, Kaneki-ken couldn't help but recall the scene of Mrs. Ryoko being killed. Although it was Mado who killed Mrs. Ryoko, Kaneki-ken saw that Kotaro Amon was also at the scene. He clearly remembered that Kotaro Amon had no expression on his face, as if the one who was killed was just an insignificant insect. Before Fugashima Sato could wait for Kaneki-ken's reply, Kotaro Amon and Satoki came up again. Under his control, Fugashima Sato's tail Kagun instantly swung towards Kotaro Amon and Satoki. Kotaro Amon immediately swung the stick hammer in his hand and knocked Fugashima Sato's Kagun to the ground. The posture was like knocking a poisonous snake to the ground with a stick. Satoki immediately seized the opportunity and immediately used the sharp shield-shaped Kyukin in his left hand to stab Fugashima Sato's Kagun. The sharp shield Kyukin was like a nail, nailing Fugashima Sato's Kagun into the concrete. Fugashima Sato screamed in pain and then instinctively wanted to retract his Kagun, but Aman-Kotaro didn't give him the chance at all and hit him with a heavy hammer again. Fugashima Sato's screams finally made Kaneki-ken move. Kaneki-ken stood up and shouted loudly, "Stop!" Aman-Kotaro and Satoki couldn't help but look at Kaneki-ken when they heard the voice, only to see Kaneki-ken continue to say, "Are all gals in your eyes damned?" Facing Kaneki-ken's questioning, Aman-Kotaro and Satoki did not reply to Kaneki-ken. They both thought Kaneki-ken was a little crazy. Seeing that no one responded to him, Kaneki-ken said to himself, "I don't want to see the tragedy unfold in front of me. Since you don't listen to what I say, I can only knock you down." After that, Kaneki-ken rushed towards Aman-Kotaro and Satoki. Seeing this, Satoki couldn't help but think that Kaneki-ken was a little funny, and then teased, "What? Have you watched too many second-year anime? You actually said such a thing. It's really funny." While complaining, Satoki had already taken out the pistol that he had inserted back into his waist and then raised the pistol and aimed at Kaneki-ken's head, muttering in his mouth, "Goodbye, little brat." Kaneki-ken also saw Satoki raising a gun to him, and the whole person couldn't help but tremble, and his heart became even more angry. Then, Satoki pulled the trigger at Kaneki-ken without hesitation, and the bullet burst out instantly. Kaneki-ken's figure suddenly knelt on the ground, and then the whole person slid quickly on the ground with the help of his knees. Chapter 934, Fukama Sato shot. Because the ground was wet with a lot of rain, Kaneki-ken could slide on the ground very easily. Otherwise, even if Kaneki-ken's knees were worn out, he would not be able to slide at such a speed. At the same time, just when Sato Feng admired Kaneki-ken's reaction, Fugashima Sato suddenly injured the pain and cut off part of his tail Kagun, resolving the situation where the Kagun was bound. After knowing that Fugashima Sato cut off his Kagun, Aman-Kotaro immediately released the abandoned Kagun that he had suppressed. As a result, the abandoned broken Kagun, like the broken tail of a gecko, tossed and turned wildly. Aman-Kotaro could only swing the stick hammer in his hand again and hit it again. As a result, this time the broken Kagun entangled with Yan-Kotaro's stick hammer Kyukin. Suddenly, Aman-Kotaro was entangled with the broken Kagun. Fugashima Sato immediately controlled the Kagun again and wanted to use the Kagun to knock the pistol out of Sato Feng's hand. After knowing that Masato Fugachi's Kagoon had broken free from his control, and that his Kagoon was out of control, Sato Feng suddenly rolled over, then pointed his gun at Masato Fugachi, and finally pulled the trigger. Then, gunshots were heard one after another. After Sato Feng seized the opportunity, he had no intention of giving Masato Fugachi a chance to survive, and the position of each shot was chosen just right. Sato Feng kept pulling the trigger until there were no bullets in the magazine, but he still refused to give up, and kept pulling the trigger. After there were no bullets, the trigger made a mechanical sound of clicking. Although Masato Fugachi had been with the gecko, his strength was not strong, so facing the dense bullets, Masato Fugachi could not completely dodge them. Then, several of those bullets hit Masato Fugachi, and one bullet directly hit Masato Fugachi's head. This bullet killed Fugachi Masato on the spot, and Fugachi Masato fell straight backwards. When Sato Feng chose to shoot Fugachi Masato, Kaneki Ken had already rushed up, and then threw himself on Sato Feng, then hugged Sato Feng tightly, and finally bit Sato Feng's shoulder. Kaneki Ken bit off a piece of meat on Sato Feng's shoulder, and then Kaneki Ken swallowed the meat without hesitation. With the intake of blood and energy, Kaneki Ken's Kukuri became agitated all of a sudden, and two tentacles like bright red Kukuri grew out from Kaneki Ken's lower back. Sato Feng screamed in pain, and then kept hitting Kaneki Ken's head with a pistol, trying to knock Kaneki Ken out. Kaneki Ken can be said to have been stimulated by blood and flesh to the point that all the RC cells in his body have become active, so such an attack is impossible to knock Kaneki Ken out. After hearing Sato Kid scream, Amonkotaro immediately picked up the hammer in his hand and hit Kaneki Ken's back. But now Kaneki Ken released his Kagoon, and Amonkotaro's hammer only hit Kaneki Ken's two scales. Because Kaneki Ken couldn't even control his Kagoon eyes, he couldn't control the release and retraction of his Kagoon freely, so Kaneki Ken could only release his Kagoon when he was extremely angry or stimulated by blood and flesh. Chapter 935 Conversation between the two parties. If Kaneki Ken had not been unable to kill humans, he would have definitely bitten the aorta in Sato Kid's neck. This bite would not kill Sato Kid immediately, but if he did not stop the bleeding and send him to the hospital in time, Sato Kid would definitely not survive for more than 2 minutes. Then, Kaneki Ken suddenly used Sato Kid's body as a springboard and kicked his feet vigorously on Sato Kid's body. Then Kaneki Ken's whole body flipped in the air and finally stood where Fugachi Masato fell to the ground. Looking at the bullet hole on Fugachi Masato's mask and forehead, Kaneki Ken's heart suddenly fell into the abyss. Last time, because of his indifference, Mrs. Ryoko died. What about this time? Is Fugachi Masato's death related to him again? Why? Why do you have to kill him? Kaneki Ken turned around and looked at Sato Kid angrily and questioned him. Sato Feng looked painful, covering his bitten shoulder with his hand. Sato Feng's shoulder and coat were bitten off. It is estimated that Kaneki Ken swallowed the clothes without thinking. Facing Kaneki Ken's question, Sato Feng felt very strange. He didn't understand why Kaneki Ken asked this question. In his opinion, the Gao investigator was originally there to eradicate Gao. And Gao is a recognized enemy of mankind, so it is normal to be eradicated. Because we are Gao investigators, our duty and mission is to eradicate Gao and maintain the peace and stability of human society. At this time, Amonkotaro answered Kaneki Ken's question. Then should I kill you too? Can't humans and Gaos coexist peacefully? You have made a child lose his mother, and now you have made that child lose his father. Maybe the Gaos hate not humans, but you investigators who completely deny them. Kaneki Ken questioned again. As for Kaneki Ken's strange words, Kotaro Amon couldn't help but think that Kaneki Ken was very strange. He actually wanted to coexist peacefully with humans. This was simply a fantasy. What are you talking about? Gaos. Gaos can only survive by eating humans. In the eyes of Gaos, humans are food. Such creatures that can only survive by eating humans are monsters, even if they look like humans. Gaos have killed so many innocent human lives. You actually want humans and Gaos to get along well? Do you think it's possible? Idiot guy. Sato Feng said to Kaneki Ken, very unhappy at this time, and finally scolded Kaneki Ken. Hearing this, Kaneki Ken did not refute. Kaneki Ken admitted that there are indeed vicious gals in the gals group, but there are also gals who want to get along with humans in a friendly manner and choose to eat dead bodies to survive. Just like humans have bad people and good people, we can't deny the existence of good people just because of one bad guy. This is unfair to the gals and to humans. While talking, Sato Feng was paying attention to Kaneki Ken and was also ready to quickly take out the magazine to change the bullets and shoot. Just as Sato Feng reached out to take out the magazine, Kaneki Ken's Kagun suddenly stabbed towards Sato Feng's hand. Sato Feng's arm was pierced, and the magazine in his hand fell to the ground. Chapter 936, Change of Mindset. Because Satoki'd shot and killed Fugashima's Sato, Kaneki Ken paid more attention to Fugashima's Sato, and his body's intuition also told Kaneki Ken that Satoki'd was much more dangerous than Yamankatero. So when Satoki'd made a move, Kaneki Ken decisively pierced Satoki'd's arm with his Kagun. The death of Fugashima's Sato has made Kaneki Ken completely unwilling to cause any harm to humans. As long as he doesn't take lives, it's fine. As for getting injured, Kaneki Ken no longer cares about it. Seeing Kaneki Ken actively attacking, Yamankatero picked up the stick hammer in his hand and hit Kaneki Ken's scaled Kagun. However, Kaneki Ken now has 2 scaled Kagun released, so although Yamankatero attacked one of the Kagun, the other Kagun immediately stabbed at Satoki'd's hand holding the pistol. Kaneki Ken planned to injure Satoki'd's hands and make him lose the ability to fight. This is what Kaneki Ken believes is the best way to stop the fight. Although Sato Feng was injured, his body's reaction was not affected. In addition, he had received special training. After one of his hands was injured by Kaneki Ken, Sato Feng quickly realized Kaneki Ken's intention. Sato Feng couldn't help but think that Kaneki Ken was pretending to be merciful and actually fought in such a ridiculous way. Sato Feng immediately rolled out on the spot and then immediately ran to the location where Kyukin was inserted into the ground by himself at the fastest speed. Sato Feng knew that he could no longer use the pistol in this situation. The only feasible way now was to take Kyukin back to his hand and then cooperate with Yamankatero to deal with Kaneki Ken. Although Sato Feng could change the magazine with one hand, it would definitely take more time than changing the magazine with both hands, especially when the magazine fell on the ground. Kaneki Ken would definitely seize the opportunity, and Sato Feng didn't want to give Kaneki Ken this opportunity. Because Kaneki Ken was aiming at Sato Feng's arm, Sato Feng squatted down and just avoided the attack trajectory of Kaneki Ken's Kagun. Yamankatero swung the stick hammer in his hand and hit Kaneki Ken's Kagun violently. Seeing that he failed to injure Satoki'd's other arm, Kaneki Ken had to retract his Kagun and chose passive defense. Satoki'd also took advantage of Kaneki Ken's lack of killing intention and successfully got the shield Kyukin back in his hand. Yamankatero saw that Kaneki Ken took the initiative to defend himself, and he couldn't help but realize that Kaneki Ken didn't seem to be willing to fight, so Yamankatero also paused his attack and stood still. After getting Kyukin back, Sato Feng quickly stood beside Yamankatero and whispered, "Katero, I'll count to 1, 2, 3, and we'll rush up together. This guy really doesn't seem to want to take our lives. We can use this to deal with him." After that, Sato Feng began to count down 3. As soon as he counted to 3, Yamankatero stopped him and said, "Wait. In that case, I think we should go to support Mado Senpai. After all, the fox is likely to go to find Mado Senpai." Yamankatero didn't have a strong desire to kill Kaneki Ken, and this feeling made Yamankatero very strange. Perhaps he felt that Kaneki Ken seemed to be really different from other gals. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 937, Fateful Showdown. Hearing this, Sato Feng said, "We have to get rid of this little gal before we can rush over. Do you think he will let us go? His mission is probably to delay us, so we must get rid of this little brat as soon as possible. Leave this to me. You go to Senior Mado first." Yamankatero still looked a little worried, so he suggested, If Sato Feng was not injured, Amon Kotaro would definitely choose to let Sato Feng deal with Kaneki Ken alone. But now Sato Feng was injured. Amon Kotaro really didn't trust Sato Feng to deal with Kaneki Ken alone. Although Kaneki Ken really didn't seem to want to take their lives, there was no guarantee that Kaneki Ken would suddenly turn against them. Sato Feng thought about it, then looked at Kaneki Ken, and finally agreed to Amon Kotaro's proposal. Compared to Kaneki Ken, Fox White Feather made Sato Feng more concerned. Because Sato Feng knew that the fox was stronger than Kaneki Ken. Compared to a Ghoul like Kaneki Ken who was not very dangerous, Sato Feng, who regarded the strongest Ghoul investigator of CCG, Erima Kisho, as his lifelong goal, preferred to deal with a strong Ghoul rather than a weakling like Kaneki Ken. Then be careful. Sato Feng reminded Amon Kotaro, and immediately turned and ran away. Seeing this, Kaneki Ken attacked Sato Feng again with his back waist, trying to stop Sato Feng from leaving. Your opponent is me, Eye Patch Kid. Amon Kotaro swung the club hammer in his hand and hit the attacking Ghoul of Kaneki Ken. Amon Kotaro knocked Kaneki Ken's Ghoul away with 2 clubs, allowing Sato Feng to evacuate successfully. Then Amon Kotaro took the initiative to force Kaneki Ken to come over. Seeing this, Kaneki Ken knew that he had no way to stop Sato Feng from leaving. So he could only try his best to hold back Amon Kotaro, not giving Amon a chance to rush back. Facing the blows of Amon Kotaro's hammer, Kaneki Ken also used his Kagun to resist with all his might. Kaneki Ken might not be able to kill people, but he didn't need to show any mercy to the Kyukin used by the Ghoul investigator. After all, if the Kyukin was damaged, Amon Kotaro would not be able to pose a threat to Kaneki Ken. What on earth is this guy thinking about? Amon Kotaro also quickly discovered from the attack trajectory of Kaneki Ken's Kagun that Kaneki Ken had no intention of attacking him at all. Although Kaneki Ken's attack was also very powerful, it was all hitting the Kagun. The strength of Amon Kotaro's Kagun was not as high as Kaneki Ken's scale Kagun. Although Amon Kotaro's Kagun was made of armor Kagun, it was estimated that the level of the Kagun package provider was not high, so it could not be compared with Kaneki Ken's S-level scale Kagun. In such a head-on confrontation, Amon Kotaro's hammer finally couldn't hold up, and it broke into pieces in the next blow. Amon Kotaro was a little distracted by the damage to the cook, but soon Amon Kotaro picked up the round tube made of special material, and continued to throw it at Kaneki Ken. When the round tube hit the Kagun, it couldn't hold up, and broke into 2 pieces. One of the broken pieces bounced back due to the huge reaction. Amon Kotaro held the other broken section of the steel tube, and then stabbed it hard at Kaneki Ken's Kagun. But this broken round tube couldn't penetrate into Kaneki Ken's Kagun at all, and Amon Kotaro was pushed out by Kaneki Ken's Kagun. Chapter 938 Severed Arm. After being knocked out by the Kagun, Kotaro Amon quickly got up, because Kaneki Ken's attack just now was not very powerful, and it could only be regarded as a push for Kotaro Amon. Kotaro Amon, who got up, did not expect that Kaneki Ken's Kagun was so powerful. With such a strong Kagun, he must have eaten a lot of people, right? Suddenly, Kotaro Amon felt that Kaneki Ken was a little hypocritical. Ghouls are ghouls. No matter how kind they all want to eat people. Kotaro Amon muttered in his heart. Then, Kotaro Amon rushed towards Kaneki Ken with his bare hands, intending to fight Kaneki Ken with his fists. Seeing that Amon Kotaro was still determined to fight him, Kaneki Ken immediately shouted, "Enough. Do you really want to die?" Just as Amon Kotaro had come in front of Kaneki Ken and was about to punch him, Kaneki Ken's Kagun pierced into Amon Kotaro's shoulders, causing Amon Kotaro to pause. However, Kaneki Ken's Kagun did not penetrate Amon Kotaro's body. Amon Kotaro still endured the pain and punched Kaneki Ken. How can ghouls live in peace with humans? Idiot. Amon Kotaro couldn't help but say after punching him. Amon Kotaro's punch and words seemed to wake Kaneki Ken up, and it seemed that they had different meanings from different angles. Kaneki Ken suddenly turned around and punched Amon Kotaro hard on the forehead, knocking Amon Kotaro to the ground. Amon Kotaro seemed to be knocked unconscious by a punch, and there was no movement after he fell to the ground. Kaneki Ken looked down at the unconscious Amon Kotaro and said, "Not all humans are like you. Not all ghouls are like you think. Idiot." After that, Kaneki Ken was still worried about Amonkotaro, so he checked Amonkotaro's breath again. After confirming that Amonkotaro was still alive, Kaneki Ken breathed a sigh of relief. After Mado approached Hinami with the long sword Kyukin in hand, he swung it at Hinami's neck fiercely, as if he wanted Hinami to die the same way as Mrs. Ryoko. In an instant, the two pieces of armor near Hinami's shoulder blades, like her mother's, also tightly wrapped around the long sword Kyukin swung by Mado. Mado was experienced in combat. Seeing Hinami learn and use it immediately, he used the same method to wrap the long sword Kyukin in his hand, and immediately let go of Kyukin, and then took out a dagger from his belt. This dagger is not the kind of dagger used for peeling fruits on the market, but is made of the material used to make Kyukin, so it is incomparable to the daggers sold on the market. Although weapons made of this material still cannot fight against the Kagun of the Gao, they can easily break the flesh of the Gao. The round tube part of the club hammer used by Kotaro Amon is made of this material, and the hammer body is composed of the RC cells of the Kagun of the Gao, which is why, when Kotaro Amon used the round tube to hit Kaneki Ken's scaled Kagun, it would collapse directly. Then, Mado stabbed Hinami's heart with the dagger. At this critical moment, a flash of cold light flashed, and Mado's palm was chopped off. Chapter 939, Coward. Ah. Immediately, the scream of Mado was heard echoing in the whole sewer. In the scream, Mado did not panic, but immediately retreated violently. The one who cut off Mado's palm was naturally Bai Yu, who rushed over. Bai Yu's move was very decisive. If it was Kaneki Ken, it is estimated that he would not have made such a decisive choice. Mado looked through the night vision goggles and immediately saw Bai Yu wearing a fox mask standing in front of Hinami. Brother, you are here. Hinami looked at Bai Yu's back and couldn't help but sighed. Bai Yu's timely appearance did not disappoint Hinami. At least the plan was developed in the direction that Hinami thought. Are you okay? Bai Yu asked Hinami. Nothing. Hinami replied. After knowing that Hinami was fine, Bai Yu did not ask any more questions, but kept paying attention to Mado. Mado had no intention of running away at this time. If Mado had chosen to retreat after his palm was cut off, Bai Yu might have really spared his life. However, since Hinami had planned all this, it was obviously unlikely that she would let it go. Seeing that Bai Yu had not yet taken action against Mado, Hinami could not help but get anxious in her heart, fearing that Bai Yu wanted to spare Mado's life. Hina, you really want to avenge your mother, right? Bai Yu asked Hinami at this time. Yeah. Facing Bai Yu's question, Hinami did not deny it. With Hinami's words, Bai Yu's figure attacked Mado like lightning. When Mado saw Bai Yu attacking, he immediately used his other intact arm to hold the Kyukin made of Mrs. Ryoko's Kagun again, and then the Kyukin, under Mado's control, released Hinami's tail Kagun. Then, Mado activated the unique protection mechanism of this Kyukin, and finally the Kyukin wrapped Mado up. However, this kind of package is protective, so Mado was not wrapped to death inside, but left a certain amount of space. Have you become a coward? Bai Yu saw this and couldn't help but think in his heart. After Kyukin wrapped Mado inside, it formed a sphere, and then the sphere suddenly rolled. Hina, stop him. Bai Yu immediately said to Hinami. Upon hearing this, Hinami's tail katsu immediately flew over, and the two tail katsu intertwined, and then formed a net-like interception in front of the rolling Kyukin of the sphere. Mado inside also felt that he was blocked, so Mado immediately took out the emergency help device in his pocket and pressed the emergency help device. This emergency help device is not used to notify the headquarters, but to notify Amonkotaro and Satoki. Although the Kyukin made by Mrs. Ryoko's Katsu is almost close to the S-level, Mado still knows that this Kyukin is not something that cannot be broken, so Mado knows that his situation is still very dangerous. Of course, Mado was not a coward, otherwise he would have run away immediately. The reason why he hid inside was to try to get support from Amonkotaro and Satoki as soon as possible. But what Mado didn't know was that Amonkotaro and Satoki were no longer able to help. Even if the injured Satoki could come, it was not worth mentioning to Bai Yu. Chapter 940, Choice. Even if Sato Feng was in his prime, Bai Yu could easily knock him down. Even if Mado was there, Mado could not stop Bai Yu from doing whatever he wanted to Sato Feng. Water wheel. After Mado, who was hiding in the ball, was stopped, Bai Yu immediately jumped up and used a water wheel, intending to use a water wheel to break Mado's shell. Mado saw that the direction of the sewer was blocked, and in order to delay time, Mado ran in the other direction like a hamster in a cage. Under Mado's movement, the spherical cook began to roll in the opposite direction. Bai Yu's water wheel just brushed the surface of the sphere and did not cut the sphere head on. "Old man, are you still struggling?" Seeing this, Bai Yu immediately released the same tail Kirik as Hinami and then formed a blockade in the other direction. Bai Yu also only had one tail Kirik, but it was much thicker than Hinami's. Hinami was surprised and shocked to see that Bai Yu had the same tail Kagun as hers. Although there are only 4 types of Kagun, most of them will not be very different in form, but it was quite surprising to see that Bai Yu's tail Kagun was the same as hers. After sealing both ends, Bai Yu rushed to the sphere again, and then stabbed the spherical Kyukin with the knife Kagun in his hand. Bai Yu's knife Kagun immediately stabbed into the spherical Kyukin, but it was unknown whether it stabbed the Mado inside. Mado in the spherical Kyukin was sweating all over because Bai Yu's knife Kagun was next to his neck. If the position of the stab was a little off, Mado's carotid artery would have been cut. Immediately, Mado squatted down. Then, Bai Yu's knife Kagun swept across the sphere like cutting a watermelon, cutting off a piece of the spherical Kyukin. Mado knew that he could no longer hide, so he immediately grasped the handle connected to the hermetic bag storage device and released the protection mechanism. Just after Mado released Kyukin's protection mode, Bai Yu's tail hermetic bag wrapped around Mado tightly. The tail hermetic bag was like a giant python, constantly tightening itself and squeezing Mado. Mado's face turned from red to purple, and then he fainted. Then Bai Yu let go of Mado, and Mado collapsed into the waterway. In fact, Bai Yu could have sent Mado to death directly, but in the end Bai Yu decided to let Hinami decide the right of life and death of Mado. Although Hinami was still a child, Mado had killed Mrs. Ryoko after all, so as a daughter Hinami's thoughts were the most important. "Hina, whether to do it or not, brother will leave it to you to decide." Bai Yu looked at Hinami and said. Hearing this, Hinami did not expect Bai Yu to leave this kind of thing to her. She thought Bai Yu would help her get rid of Mado directly. However, Hinami still walked up to the unconscious Mado, and then looked at the motionless Mado, and asked Bai Yu, "Is he still alive?" "No, but if he stays in the water like this, he will drown, but I guess he will wake up by choking." Bai Yu replied calmly. Hinami had never done such a thing, so she didn't know how to start. Chapter 941, Hit. While Hinami was thinking, Mado was awakened by choking, and the whole person started coughing violently. "Aren't you going to do it yet?" Bai Yu looked at Mado, who had been awakened by choking, and couldn't help but remind him. And for Mado to recover, Bai Yu estimated that it would take at least 5 seconds. If Hinami didn't do it in 5 seconds, Bai Yu would knock Mado unconscious again. In the end, Hinami chose revenge. Just when Hinami had just completed her revenge, a flashlight suddenly illuminated Hinami's face. And this flashlight was illuminated by the flashlight that Sato Feng bit in his mouth. After seeing the 2 pairs of bright eyes on Hinami's face, Sato Feng immediately raised the pistol in his right hand, and then decisively pulled the trigger at Hinami. There was only 1 bullet in the pistol, which was taken out of the magazine by Sato Feng, and placed in his pocket just in case, so that it could come in handy at a critical moment. The fire flashed in the darkness, and the bullet burst out of the chamber instantly. Bai Yu reacted very quickly and immediately blocked it with a knife. Bai Yu's sword is very special, so its strength is much higher than the armor. It can be said to be extremely hard. This is why Bai Yu's sword can break Mrs. Ryoko's armor. But the only disadvantage is that it basically has no defensive ability. Especially for range attacks, there is no defensive ability. For example, explosions are difficult for Bai Yu's sword to defend. Because Bai Yu's sword can only maintain the form of a long sword, and cannot change its form. Bai Yu is already invincible in Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, and it can be said that he is already the strongest swordsman, so he still has the reaction of using the blade to block bullets. If he can use the breathing method, then Bai Yu can not only block bullets with the blade, but also block bullets out of thin air, or use air to block bullets. Bai Yu blocked accurately, and the bullet hit the blade of Bai Yu's sword, making a crisp sound. Because Bai Yu's sword is extremely hard, it is unlikely to absorb energy. The huge impact force caused the bullet head to shift sideways on the blade with a width of 2 fingers. Then the trajectory of the bullet changed, turning in another direction, and hitting Hinami's shoulder, and Hinami groaned. Bai Yu did not care about Hinami at the first time, but approached Sato Feng at the fastest speed, and then came behind Sato Feng without anyone noticing. Sato Feng only felt a cool breeze blowing by his side. Years of experience made Sato Feng turn behind him immediately, but before Sato Feng turned around completely, Bai Yu hit Sato Feng on the back of his neck with a knife. Sato Feng fainted all of a sudden, and then Bai Yu dragged Sato Feng to the wall of the sewer and let Sato Feng lean against the wall. Bai Yu did not mean to kill Sato Feng, so he spared Sato Feng's life. But Bai Yu did not know that Sato Feng had killed Fugashima Sato a few minutes ago. If Bai Yu knew, would Sato Feng still survive? If Hinami knew, would she let Sato Feng survive? It is very likely that she would not. Then, Bai Yu confiscated Sato Feng's pistol and Kyukin, and then devoured them with the Devourer. Kyukin's devouring allowed Bai Yu to replenish a small amount of the power of the devil, but Bai Yu was not too surprised. After all, Kyukin's essence is Kakubu. Kakubu is the life source of the Gao, so Kakubu can replenish the power of the devil. There is nothing wrong with it. Chapter 942, Self-rooted Hibeyo. After doing all this, Bai Yu returned to Hinami. As soon as Bai Yu stood in front of Hinami, Hinami fell into Bai Yu's arms, and at the same time, Hinami's Kagun also retracted into her body. Seeing this, Bai Yu knew that Hinami was affected by the RC inhibitor in the bullet. Bai Yu did not choose to take the bullet out of Hinami immediately in the sewer. Then, Bai Yu came to the Kyukin made of Mrs. Ryoko's Kagun. Through Hinami's Kagun, Bai Yu had recognized that this Kyukin was made with Mrs. Ryoko's Kagun. Bai Yu took apart the Kyukin, and then took out Mrs. Ryoko's Kagun from the Kagun storage device. The Kagun beat like a heart in Bai Yu's hand. Although Mrs. Ryoko's Kagun was still alive, Bai Yu knew that Mrs. Ryoko would not survive. The Kagun did not have the ability to reshape the body, because the Kagun was not the main body, but just a carrier, or a simple organ. Even if we extract the DNA of Mrs. Ryoko from the hermaphrodite, and then clone her by cloning embryos, the cloned life will not have the previous emotions and memories. In this way, the cloned life will not be Mrs. Ryoko herself except for her appearance. Secondly, what is cloned is an embryo, not the adult state of Mrs. Ryoko before her death. So cloning is obviously not realistic and feasible. Bai Yu also knows that taking this hermaphrodite out of the storage device will gradually make it lose its activity, but Bai Yu still dare not bring the storage device back to the antique, because he is afraid that there will be a tracker in the storage device, which will expose the antique coffee shop. At this time, Mrs. Ryoko's hermaphrodite suddenly got into Bai Yu's sleeves, and then with a slippery effort, the hermaphrodite attached to the spine in the middle of the shoulder blades on both sides. When Bai Yu was about to reach out and grab the hermaphrodite from his back, he felt a sharp pain in his back, as if something had pierced into his back and seemed to be connected to the nerves of his spine. Hey wait. Bai Yu suddenly became nervous. Without giving Bai Yu a chance to react, Mrs. Ryoko's Cura had already taken root in Bai Yu's body. When Bai Yu reached out to touch it, he found that Mrs. Ryoko's Cura had hardened into an exoskeleton. Bai Yu pulled it off, but found that he couldn't pull it off. If he used force, he would feel that his spine might be pulled out. Immediately, Bai Yu could only ignore it for the time being, and carried the unconscious Hinami on his back. Even though Hinami was unconscious, he still held the purse tightly in his hand. Not long after, Bai Yu rushed back to the exit of the sewer, where Kaneki Ken was. After exiting the sewer, it was still raining heavily outside. Bai Yu saw Kaneki Ken kneeling on the ground. In front of Kaneki Ken, there seemed to be a person lying. Because of the heavy rain in the night, the raindrops were crackling on the waterlogged ground, so the ground vision was very unclear. Bai Yu quickly walked behind Kaneki Ken and saw that it was Fugashima Sato lying on the ground. At the same time, he heard Kaneki Ken crying. Looking at the bullet hole on Fugashima Sato's mask, Bai Yu could already guess what happened. One tragedy had just come to an end, and another tragedy happened again. Chapter 943 Return to Antiques. Perhaps the reason why hatred can never dissipate is that we have chosen revenge. Bai Yu stood behind Kaneki Ken and did not speak for a long time. He did not blame Kaneki Ken. After all, you can't force a weak person to change anything. Maybe Kaneki Ken himself is not weak, but Kaneki Ken's heart is not strong enough at this time. Bai Yu knows very well that Kaneki Ken is too timid at the moment, so Kaneki Ken is a weak person in Bai Yu's eyes. Moreover, the death of Mr. Fugachi can be said to be caused by Hinami. If Hinami had not planned all this, Mr. Fugachi would not have gone out. Because of his concern for Hinami, then all of this would not have happened. Fortunately, Hinami fainted. Otherwise, if she saw this scene again, her spiritual world would probably collapse immediately. Kaneki, take Mr. Fugachi, let's go back to the antiques. Bai Yu stood for a moment before speaking to Kaneki Ken. Senior Bai Yu, Mr. Fugachi is dead. Woo woo woo, I should have protected Mr. Fugachi, but I didn't. Why didn't I die? Why? Kaneki Ken said with a crying voice and couldn't help choking up. Bai Yu immediately kicked Kaneki Ken and then kicked Kaneki Ken to the ground and finally said lightly, now is not the time to listen to your self-blame. Quickly carry Mr. Fugachi back to Gudang. After being kicked by Bai Yu, Kaneki Ken obediently followed Bai Yu's instructions, carried Fugachi Masato on his back, and then followed Kaneki Ken back to Gudang. When they returned to Gudang, Bai Yu and Kaneki Ken were completely soaked. At this time, in the Gudang coffee shop, in addition to Yoshimura Kausen, there was also Kirishima Tauka who came back from school waiting together. Originally, Kirishima Tauka also wanted to support Bai Yu, but was stopped by Yoshimura Kausen, so Kirishima Tauka could only wait for Bai Yu's return in the store. Seeing Bai Yu coming back from the back door, Kirishima Tauka immediately went to meet him and then asked anxiously, are you okay? What happened to Hinami? It's okay. Hinami was shot just like you last time. The bullet should also contain RC inhibitors, and now she is in a coma. Bai Yu answered very directly and briefly. At this time, Yoshimura Cousin took Hinami down from Bai Yu's back and said, leave the bullet to me. As he said that, Yoshimura Cousin carried Hinami to the second floor. Manager, remember to check if there is a tracker in the bullet. Bai Yu called Yoshimura Cousin and reminded him. Yoshimura Cousin nodded, indicating that he knew. Kirishima Tauka then looked at Kaneki Ken and Fugachi Masato, who was carried on Kaneki Ken's back, and continued to ask Bai Yu, is Mr. Fugachi also shot? Although Kaneki Ken knew about Fugachi Masato's situation, Kaneki Ken did not answer Kirishima Tauka because he was a little speechless. Mr. Fugachi has passed away. A bullet hit his head. Although Bai Yu did not want to see such a tragedy happen, Bai Yu's strong heart prevented Bai Yu from being affected by the sadness and unable to speak. As a prospective father, Bai Yu was actually more touched than Kaneki Ken, but Bai Yu also knew that he could not change the outcome of the matter. Hearing this, Kirishima Tauka's expression became solemn, with a look of disbelief. Mrs. Ryoko had already left, and now Hinami's last relatives had also left. All of a sudden, Kirishima Tauka felt that Hinami seemed to have become the same as herself, but seemed to be much more miserable than herself. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 944, Putting Away the Weak Heart. At least she still has her uncle and brother, but what about Hinami? She is left alone. Thinking of this, Kirishima Tauka became even more angry. Damn it. Unable to accept it, Kirishima Tauka turned around and punched the wall. Bai Yu did not rush to comfort Kirishima Tauka, but said to Kaneki Ken, Kaneki, carry Mr. Fugachi to the second floor. Kaneki Ken quickly followed Bai Yu's instructions and carried Mr. Fugachi to the second floor. Bai Yu and Kaneki Ken placed Fugachi upright on a bed. Bai Yu then took off his mask and then helped Fugachi Masato take off his mask. The mask Fugachi Masato was wearing was a cartoon mask similar to a bear, drawn by his daughter. Bai Yu put the removed mask on Fugachi Masato's chest. After the mask was taken off, Bai Yu saw the expression of Fugachi Masato when he was shot and killed. The expression and eyes revealed unwillingness. Bai Yu felt that maybe Fugashima Sato was unwilling to die like this. Before seeing Hinami is safe and sound, Bai Yu reached out and wiped Fugashima Sato's face, which made Fugashima Sato close his eyes. At this time, Bai Yu patted Kaneki Kin and said, "Kaneki, Mr. Fugachi's death has nothing to do with you. Don't take it to heart. If I could be as good as senior Bai Yu, Mr. Fugachi would not have died." Kaneki Ken couldn't help but shed tears again, and then wiped his tears and said, "Self-blame. Then put away your weak heart." Bai Yu couldn't help but remind him again. After speaking, Bai Yu left the room and then pulled Kirishima Taoka, who was standing outside the door, to his room. As soon as he returned to the room, Bai Yu locked the door and took off his clothes. Seeing this, Kirishima Taoka immediately became confused and nervous. At the same time, her mind was indeed thinking about other things, so she asked Bai Yu, "Bai Yu, what do you want to do?" After Bai Yu took off his shirt, he showed his back to Kirishima Taoka and then asked, "Look at my back, is there something extra on the spine?" Hearing this, Kirishima Taoka finally reacted and looked at Bai Yu's back. Kirishima Taoka did see a piece of exoskeleton-like thing on Bai Yu's back that spread from the spine to the surroundings. The thing looked like it was glued on, because it was not connected to Bai Yu's flesh. Kirishima Taoka reached out and touched it, and then tried to pull it off, and found that it didn't seem to be glued on the back, but grew together with the spine. Bai Yu could feel the whole process, and immediately Bai Yu knew that this thing had established a neural connection with him. "What is this?" Kirishima Taoka asked. "Mrs. Ryoko's hornbag," Bai Yu replied. Hearing this, Kirishima Taoka was also surprised, and then said, "How could Mrs. Ryoko's cucumber grow on you, and it grew outside your body? Did you eat Mrs. Ryoko's cucumber?" "No, the old guy's cucumber was made of Mrs. Ryoko's cucumber. I planned to bring Mrs. Ryoko's cucumber back, but it slipped onto my back and took root behind me," Bai Yu explained. Hearing this, Kirishima Taoka did not doubt Bai Yu's words, but after Bai Yu mentioned Mado, she asked about Mado's situation. "Is the old guy dead?" Chapter 945, Half Her. "Yes. Hinami chose revenge." Bai Yu nodded. "Do you know what's going on with me?" Bai Yu asked again. Kirishima Taoka looked at Bai Yu's back again, then shook her head and said, "I don't know. I haven't encountered this situation before. First of all, the Kukuri is not conscious, so it won't actively attach to other life forms. If you want to explain, it's that you ate Mrs. Ryoko's Kukuri, and then the Kukuri on your back changed. I really didn't eat it," Bai Yu declared again. "I know, you won't do such a thing." Kirishima Taoka didn't bother about whether Bai Yu lied or not. After being with Bai Yu for so long, Kirishima Taoka knew that Bai Yu was a man of his word, and Bai Yu had never lied to Kirishima Taoka, so Kirishima Taoka still had absolute trust in Bai Yu. The Kukuri may have Mrs. Ryoko's obsession. Maybe Mrs. Ryoko wants you to protect Hinami for her, Kirishima Taoka speculated. Although the speculation is a bit mysterious, it is a speculation with a beautiful meaning. Maybe. Bai Yu also echoed. After that, Bai Yu tried to stimulate the Kagoon bundle attached to his back spine to see if he could release the Kagoon of this Kagoon bundle. After Bai Yu's attempt, the Kagoon bundle really released the Kagoon, and the form of the Kagoon released was very similar to that of Hinami, but soon the two halves of the leaf-shaped Kagoon quickly rolled up on his torso and formed a beige outer armor on his torso. The outer armor covered Bai Yu's entire torso and shoulders, and even Bai Yu's face was covered with a layer of hard mask armor. When Kirishima Taoka saw the changes in Bai Yu, she couldn't help but exclaimed, "Half Kagoon." The meaning of a half Kagoon is two words, powerful. That is, Bai Yu's combat power is fully unleashed, at least S+ level strength. When Bai Yu became a half Kagoon, Kirishima Taoka had no idea. The basic condition for a half Kagoon is that there must be 3 or more Kagoon bundles in the body, so that the Kagoon can form an outer armor covering the body. Ordinary gals can't do this, because the form of the Kagoon can't be changed. If you have 6 Kagoon bags, then the Kagoon bags will be able to arm the whole body, and then make the Kagoon user a real fighting machine. In other words, Bai Yu now has at least 3 Kagoon bags in his body. Thinking of this, Kirishima Taoka looked at Bai Yu with a little fear. Bai Yu looked at the outer armor by himself. Although this outer armor is not so gorgeous and looks a little simple. However, this Kagun outer armor still adds a little domineering and majesty to Bai Yu. Soon, Bai Yu put away the outer armor Kagun and then found a dry set of clothes in the suitcase where clothes were placed. After finding the clothes, Bai Yu opened the door and pushed Kirishima Tauka out. When closing the door, he said to Kirishima Tauka, "Don't peek." After that, Bai Yu closed the door and changed clothes alone in the room. Hearing this, Kirishima Tauka couldn't help but feel a little angry, as if she would peek. Kirishima Tauka couldn't help but complain, "Who wants to peek at you, you pervert? You narcissist." Chapter 946 The Manager's Ponder. "You are so hypocritical. I have already seen your body," Kirishima Tauka complained. Not long after, Bai Yu changed into dry clothes and opened the door. Then Bai Yu said to Kirishima Tauka, "Let's go to the store manager to see what's going on." Before going to find the store manager, Bai Yu and Kirishima Tauka returned to the room where Fugashima Sato was placed. Then Kaneki Ken stayed in the room and stood in front of Fugashima Sato in a daze. "Kaneki." Bai Yu called out from outside the door. After being called by Bai Yu, Kaneki Ken turned around and looked at Bai Yu. "Go change into dry clothes first. The dead cannot be resurrected. I think you should go with us to see Hinami," Bai Yu said again. With Bai Yu's reminder, Kaneki Ken, whose mind was already in a mess, listened to Bai Yu's words and went to the dressing room to change back into the clothes in the store. After Kaneki Ken changed his clothes, Bai Yu, Kirishima Tauka and Kaneki Ken came to the door of the store manager's room. Just when Kirishima Tauka wanted to knock on the door was opened by Yoshimura Kausen. When Yoshimura Kausen opened the door, he saw 3 people standing outside the door. He thought that the 3 people had been waiting outside the door for a long time, so he took the initiative to say, "The bullet has been taken out, Hinami is fine, and she will probably wake up after a nap." "Manager, have you checked the bullet? Is there a locator?" Bai Yu asked again at this time. "Yes. I have already opened it and checked it. There is no locator inside." Yoshimura Kausen nodded and said, and he admired Bai Yu's caution and overall view very much, and then looked at Bai Yu with a look of successor. Hearing this, Bai Yu was relieved. If there was a locator, then it is estimated that they would have to evacuate the antique coffee shop immediately. "Manager, can we go in and see Hinami?" Kirishima Tauka said again. "Come in. I just need to understand the situation." Yoshimura Kausen put Bai Yu, Kirishima Tauka and Kaneki Ken into the room. Yoshimura Kausen's room is very simple. There is a bookshelf in the room with many books on it, and there are several sofas in one place. Hinami, who had taken out the bullet, was already sleeping on Yoshimura Kausen's bed. Bai Yu could tell from Hinami's expression that Hinami might be having a beautiful dream. However, after this beautiful dream, a cruel fact will be waiting for Hinami. Kirishima Tauka squatted beside the bed and looked at Hinami quietly. Kaneki Ken stood by the bed in a daze, as if he was a little afraid to face Hinami, because both of Hinami's parents passed away, and Kaneki Ken was the first person at the scene. Kaneki Ken felt that he must be a sinner in Hinami's eyes. After Bai Yu took a simple look at Hinami, he and the store manager came to the sofa and sat down, and then Bai Yu explained the situation in detail to Yoshimura Kausen. As for the details of Fugashima Sato's death, Bai Yu was not very clear, because Bai Yu was not in the battle at that time. Bai Yu only knew that Fugashima Sato was shot to death, and the gunshot on the forehead took his life. As for the torso, those were not fatal. After listening to Bai Yu's 2-minute narration, Fanken Gunshin also roughly understood the course of events and what had happened. Involuntarily, Fanken Gunshin pondered for a moment, and then let out a long breath. Chapter 947, The End of the Movement. Yoshimura Kausen actually felt pity for Hinami in his heart, but in fact, Yoshimura Kausen also knew that all the causes of the incident were actually caused by Hinami herself. Why did Fugashima Sato die? Was it because of Kaneki Ken? No. Was it because of the Ghoul investigator? It may be a part of it, but in the final analysis, it was because of Hinami. If Hinami could let go of hatred, or not rush to take revenge, then these things would not have happened. The reason why Yoshimura Kausen was hesitant was more because he was worried about whether Hinami could survive this. If she couldn't survive this hurdle, then Hinami would become very dangerous. If she was completely blinded by hatred, Hinami's psychology would most likely be distorted. It was still raining heavily outside, and there were basically no people or cars on the streets and roads. Both Gugu and Amonkotaro seemed to be immersed in an inexplicable sadness. The sound of rain was like the notes played on the piano, each of which was sad. The knocked out Kotaro Amon finally regained consciousness. As his senses slowly recovered, he felt dizzy and his nose was very painful. After standing up tremblingly, Kotaro Amon looked around and found that the area was empty, without a single person. Did he leave? This made Kotaro Amon a little puzzled. Kaneki Ken didn't kill him and eat him. Looking at his healthy limbs, Kotaro Amon didn't know whether he should be thankful. However, Kotaro Amon soon called Mado and Satoki with the CCG's special pager. The pager is waterproof, so it can still be used directly in the heavy rain. After calling for a while, Kotaro Amon didn't receive any replies from Mado and Satoki. Kotaro Amon couldn't help but feel cold in his heart, and he didn't dare to think about it any further. Kotaro Amon even thought that the reason he survived might be that Shiraha didn't kill him, so that he could help Mado and Satoki collect their bodies. With a rough mood, Kotaro Amon took out the flashlight from his coat and walked into the sewer with the flashlight. At this time, Kotaro Amon was no longer afraid of an ambush in the sewer because Kotaro Amon didn't think Kaneki Ken would be so bored. He walked in the sewer for a long time with the flashlight until he was about to reach the other end. Kotaro Amon came to the place where Mado, Hinami and Shiraha had a fight, and then he shone the light in the waterway and saw a person wearing the same coat as himself collapsed in the stagnant water. Kotaro Amon's heart tightened immediately, and he immediately rushed up, then helped the person who fell in the stagnant water into his arms, and finally shone the flashlight on the person's face, and found that the person was the dead Mado. Mato-senpai. Amonkotaro's expression immediately twisted, and his inner emotions surged up at once, making Amonkotaro feel sad. Even though Amonkotaro didn't want to cry, the accumulation of emotions still made Amonkotaro's tears keep falling. Mato-senpai. 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 Amonkotaro kept shaking Mato in his arms, but Mato was already dead. No matter how Amonkotaro shook, Mato still didn't respond. Amonkotaro's sad voice echoed in the sewer. Chapter 948. Aftermath. 1. Along with the cries of Amonkotaro, Sato Feng, who was knocked unconscious, gradually woke up. After waking up, Sato Feng only felt a pain in the back of his neck and his eyes were dark. This was because the sewer was dark, so Sato Feng could not have visual senses in the sewer without light. The only sense Sato Feng could hear was hearing, and he clearly heard Amonkotaro's grief-stricken cries. Kotaro. Sato Feng called Amonkotaro. After hearing Sato Feng's voice, Amonkotaro couldn't help but temporarily break away from the sad mood, because Sato Feng's cry reminded Amonkotaro of Sato Feng this time. Sato. Where are you? Are you still alive? Amonkotaro also responded to Sato Feng with a rough mood. In a panic, Amonkotaro picked up the flashlight and began to shine in the direction of Sato Feng's voice. Still alive. Sato Feng couldn't help but sighed, and then asked back, are you okay? Sato Feng also saw the flashlight flashing in the dark. As soon as he finished speaking, Amonkotaro's flashlight hit Sato Feng's face. After seeing Sato Feng with the help of the flashlight, Amonkotaro couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the situation was not the worst. I'm fine. But Mado-senpai died in the line of duty. Amonkotaro had already put away his tears, and then explained the general situation to Sato Feng very sadly. Hearing this, Sato Feng's heart suddenly became heavy, but he was more confused and puzzled, and confused about why he was not killed. It stands to reason that Mado was killed, and Gao should have killed him as well to be logical. Sato Feng walked towards the direction of Amonkotaro's flashlight, and came in front of Amonkotaro. With the help of the flashlight, Sato Feng quickly saw Mado in Amonkotaro's arms. I'm sorry, I couldn't support Mado-senpai. When I arrived, Mado-senpai was probably already killed. Sato Feng said to Amonkotaro with an apologetic tone. It's not your fault. Amonkotaro didn't blame Sato Feng. After that, Sato Feng took out the cell phone from his coat and called the branch staff to come here to pick them up. After all, he and Amonkotaro couldn't stay in this place forever, nor could they carry Mado's body back. This wasn't a question of willingness, but a question of unreality. After notifying the branch by phone, Sato Feng asked Amonkotaro, "Did you get rid of that gal?" Hearing this, Amonkotaro shook his head and said, "No, I was knocked unconscious by him. When I woke up, the kid was gone." After hearing what Amonkotaro said, Sato Feng did not expect that Amonkotaro did not get rid of Kaneki Ken, the kid. Sato Feng could not help but think that Amonkotaro seemed to be a bit too rookie, but Sato Feng did not say it clearly. Of course, this must have something to do with Amonkotaro's strength, but Kaneki Ken has the foundation of Kamishiro Rise after all. As a glutton, Kamishiro Rise is not afraid of even geckos, so it is unlikely that Amonkotaro wants to beat Kaneki Ken. If Kaneki Ken was not kind-hearted and could not let go, then Kaneki Ken could definitely use all the strength of Kamishiro Rise. Chapter 949, Aftermath, 2. Therefore, it can only be said that Sato Feng thought too simply about Kaneki Ken. After all, Kaneki Ken's body has the qualifications of S level. Sato Feng did not dwell on Kaneki Ken's problem, but said to himself with a puzzled look on his face, "You and I were not killed, we were both knocked unconscious, but Senior Mado was killed. This is really strange. Since he is going to kill us, he should not think it is troublesome to kill both of us." Sato Feng had never encountered such a situation in other districts before. The gals there were extremely aggressive and fierce, but this action in District 20 refreshed Sato Feng's cognition. When Amonkotaro heard that Sato Feng and himself were in the same situation, his doubts became even more puzzled. If Amonkotaro was not killed because Kaneki Ken's ideas were really different from those of other gals, then why was Sato Feng not killed? Is it also because the fox and Kaneki Ken have the same ideas? If so, why was Mado killed? This is a bit contradictory, and since they have killed Mado, they can also kill Sato Feng. After all, being able to knock Sato Feng unconscious when he cannot resist is definitely a condition for killing Sato Feng. Revenge. Amonkotaro, who was lost in thought, finally said these two words subconsciously. If there was any reason that caused the foxes to want Mado's life so much, then Amonkotaro could only think of the death of Mrs. Ryoko, who was killed by Mado himself. Revenge? Sato Feng didn't know about Mrs. Ryoko because Sato Feng hadn't come to Area 20 at that time. Then, Amonkotaro told Sato Feng about Mrs. Ryoko. After listening to it, Sato Feng couldn't help but feel that the behavior of Area 20 gal was a bit ridiculous and absurd. What is this? Don't want to fall out with CCG. Not long after, a commercial vehicle with special spraying drove to the entrance of the sewer. Kotaro, Amon and Kid Sato have already moved Mado to the entrance. Because it was raining heavily outside, Kotaro, Amon and Kid Sato could only wait in the sewer. Several staff members in raincoats got off the car. After coming to Kotaro, Amon and Kid Sato, they performed a CCG specific salute. Kotaro, Amon and Kid Sato also responded. The staff did not ask too many questions, but carried Mado's body into the car. They had seen a lot of such things. After that, Kotaro, Amon and Kid Sato also got in the car, and the car quickly drove away from this place full of sadness. In this battle, it can be said that Kotaro Amon's side suffered heavy losses. Not only did Mado die, but all the cookins were completely scrapped. Therefore, it is very likely that Kotaro, Amon and Kid Sato will be punished by their superiors. After that, Amon, Kotaro and Sato Kid stopped their activities in District 20, partly because there was no Kyukin, partly because they were suspended, partly because Sato Kid's arm needed some time to recover, partly because of the large-scale Gaol riots in other districts, and partly because of dealing with Mado's funeral. All these complicated reasons came together, and District 20 once again returned to a stable and relatively peaceful state. Chapter 950, The Smell of Mom. That night, Kaneki Ken did not go home because of the weather and other factors, but stayed at the antique shop for one night. The rain continued to fall that night until the next morning, and it gradually stopped. It can be said that it was the longest rain in the entire rainy season. Bai Yu did not sleep all night and lay quietly in bed. After the arrangement of Yoshimura Kausen, The store was closed that day, and Kirishima Talca also asked for a day off from school. After a while, Nishio Nishiki, Iramizuan, Furuma Renji and Shifen Rinchi all came to the antique shop early. And Hinami also woke up after a good rest. After waking up, Hinami soon found that she was sleeping in the manager's room, and everyone had gathered in the room. Hinami couldn't help but feel a little strange, and didn't know what was going on at this time. After Hinami woke up, everyone looked at Hinami, but no one spoke, and everyone's face was slightly gloomy. Hinami also felt that the atmosphere was not right, so she glanced around everyone, and finally fixed her sight on Bai Yu and said, "I feel my mother's presence." As she said that, Hinami rushed to get out of bed, but after all, Hinami had not fully recovered, so as soon as her feet touched the ground, she fell to the ground powerlessly. Hinashi. Kirishima Talca was the first to rush up, and helped Hinami up. "I'm fine, Sister Talca," Hinami said after she stood firm again. Then, Hinami walked in front of Bai Yu, put her nose close to Bai Yu and smelled it, and said, "Yes, Bai Yu brother has the smell of mother. Is mother back?" After hearing what Hinami said, everyone looked at Bai Yu, with curiosity in their eyes. How could Bai Yu have the smell of Mrs. Ryoko? Unless they are a couple who have been together for a long time, or have had contact recently, they will leave someone else's smell on their bodies. The first one is obviously unlikely. Could it be the second one? However, according to Kaneki Ken's narration, Mrs. Ryoko was beheaded by Bai. This kind of death is 100% impossible to survive. In fact, Kirishima Talca already roughly knew the reason. It was probably because Mrs. Ryoko's Kakubu was on Bai Yu, so Bai Yu now has the smell of Mrs. Ryoko. Others did not know about this, so they were naturally confused. Bai Yu touched Hinami's head, and then said very realistically, "Mom can't come back, Hinami. But brother Bai Yu has the smell of mom, so he must have met mom to leave it." Hinami still said in disbelief. At this time, Bai Yu immediately took off his shirt, and then turned his back to Hinami and said, "Hina, your mother's Kakubu parasitized on your brother's back, so your brother has your mother's smell. Originally, your brother planned to bring the Kakubu back to you, but it grew on my back and now it can't be removed." After hearing what Bai Yu said, the others couldn't help but look at Bai Yu's back. The hardened and mutated Kukuri on Bai Yu's back could no longer be seen as a Kukuri, but Yoshimura Kalzen could sense that it was a Kukuri, and after careful sensing, it was indeed Mrs. Ryoko's. However, it was the first time that Yoshimura Kalzen had seen a Kukuri growing outside the body. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.